There are many stories of pain and suffering at Coalinga State Hospital. This is David Smith's. In 1995, David Smith was released from prison onto parole after serving a number of years for sexual conduct with children, nonviolent crimes committed in 1988. During his 3 years of parole, spent in living in Long Beach, he received a full range of therapy, including sex offender treatment and psychotherapy. He completed all of his treatment before being released from parole. He lived in the community for an additional 2 years without incident. In 2000, he moved from Long Beach to New York State to be closer to his family. He had notified Long Beach police by mail of his move to New York. Meanwhile, Long Beach authorities, seemingly unaware of his relocation outside the state, issued an arrest warrant for failure to re-register with their offices. He was then arrested in New York and extradited to California, where he was convicted of failing to register as a sex offender and sentenced to 5 years in state prison on October 26, 2000. The Court of Appeals affirmed his conviction on June 18, 2002. Smith petitioned for review of his conviction in the California Supreme Court, which granted review on September 18, 2002. While incarcerated, the district attorney filed a petition for Smith's commitment as an SVP. During this time, he was diagnosed with throat cancer. He had been scheduled to be released onto parole on March 2, 2004, but was instead transferred to the custody of the Los Angeles County Sheriff while he was considered as a candidate for civil commitment in the Department of Mental Health. On March 29, 2004, the California Supreme Court reversed Smith's conviction because a jury had been improperly instructed. The district attorney elected not to refile charges against Smith, who had already served the majority of his sentence by the time his conviction was reversed. However, for David Smith it was too late. The wheels of DMH had already been set in motion, and he was held in LA County Jail for several years, pending transfer to the DMH to become a hosprisoner. On September 25, 2006, David was finally transferred to Coalinga State Hospital. At the time of his transfer, he was spitting up blood. He was seen by Dr. Hamrick, considered to have been one of the very few good doctors to work at CSH, but who has since left. Hamrick ordered a scan of David's throat, but when Smith was transferred to a medical facility, they performed a chest scan instead. He objected, saying that it was supposed to be a scan of his throat. Nevertheless, they performed the chest scan. Hamrick again ordered the throat scan, and again the scan performed was a chest scan. Dr. Hamrick would later say to Mike St. Martin, who had begun advocating on Smith's behalf, quote, "There are sadistic elements within the hospital, CSH, that are purposely sabotaging procedures so that patients' health is at risk." Finally, David received a full-body scan, which clearly showed a massive growth in his throat, but that also revealed something else. He had 2 masses growing in his brain as well. However, David was not told of the brain tumors, but only of the throat mass, which was then biopsied, which then proved to be malignant. During this time, his condition deteriorated to the point where he was unable to eat or swallow, and he began rapidly losing weight. This last summer, David had his larynx and much of his throat removed. His voice box removed, he could only speak with the aid of an electronic larynx. Several months ago, he began suffering head pain, still not realizing that doctors had previously spotted the brain tumors from the earlier scan. He was sent back to a cancer specialist in San Luis Obispo, where he received another scan which clearly showed the brain tumors as well as nodules on his lungs and the possibility of bone cancer in his hip. Finally, he was told of the brain tumors as well as the suspected lung cancer. Since then, David has continued to decline in health, and just last week was again transferred to San Luis Obispo to undergo brain surgery, which, it is believed, has now been performed. 1 week before this most recent scheduled and no doubt costly surgery, the Wellness and Recovery Program team, WRP, called David to a, quote, team meeting where, in a manner characterized by David as, quote, impersonal and businesslike, they announced that he was terminally ill and that they were now willing to release him from the custody of the Department of Mental Health. This would have spared the department the expense of David's surgery. David Smith refused to sign the release papers. Although Mr. Smith had given instructions that if there were any more bad news, it should come through his spiritual counselor, David's spiritual counselor was not even informed by CSH staff of either Mr. Smith's terminal illness or his upcoming hospital appointment for brain surgery. David ruefully commented that he would have been better served had he been informed of his terminal illness by a sympathetic spiritual counselor rather than in this swiftly efficient manner he was notified, as if only a state commodity. Upon deciding to leave DMH, Dr. Hamrick told Mike St. Martin, quote, "I'm not going to practice malpractice."